Welcome to the Costa Property Podcast, the podcast that turns your dreams of owning a piece of paradise on the Costa del Sol into reality. I'm Warner Laurie, and I'm joined by my co-host and wife, Sandra Laurie.
Join us as we embark on navigating the ins and outs of real estate and relocation to this beautiful region.
We're not just about market trends, we're about sharing real-life experiences, because we know the struggle firsthand, and I've helped many people navigate this challenge also.
If you're dreaming of your perfect Costa del Sol home and want to get real, no-frills, expert advice, then you're absolutely in the right place. Join us each week as we share honest insights and information that will guide your journey. Q1 is over. The year is flying. So listen, what's actually happening in the Costa del Sol property market right now?
There's been a lot of noise this quarter, Sandra. So I wanted to dig down and give you the overview of Q1 for our business. It's actually been a really good Q1. We've listed a lot of properties, which is amazing, as properties now are king. And we've actually sold a lot of properties as well. We still do have a problem with stock. There's not enough properties coming on the market for sale for the demand. So the inquiries are down, but what it means is the people that are making the inquiries are ready to buy. You know, they've got everything in place because they know that they need to be quick to find that dream property.
I think if we look at the market last year compared to this year, the inbox inquiries are definitely lower. There's less traffic coming through, but I think the buyer is more serious. So the buyer that is coming through, as you correctly say, ready to go. But I think the lack of stock is definitely a problem in the market overall. Not for us, because you've listed a lot of properties this quarter. When you have properties listed, you have buyers, right? That's just the way it is. Properties are king, as you say. But the challenge is for other agencies out there that don't operate a listing business like us, they are kind of clutching at straws, trying to find a property for their customer. And I don't know about you, but I just feel that a lot of the inquiries from other agencies are lacking some due diligence. It's almost like putting a square peg into a round hole. So that's just something that I'm seeing in the market. It's a little bit dog eat dog at the moment.
Yeah, we would call it the Wild West. Properties are king, and we're so lucky that we have a great reputation in the Benalmádena area, and a lot of people know and trust us to give us the properties, so we're so lucky in that stage. But yeah, there is more and more agents calling me every day to see the properties that I have, but we also have direct buyers coming, so most of the properties that we're selling just now, we're selling through our database of clients who are waiting for that right property, or somebody that's on our database, or somebody that comes through our property portals or Facebook or social media. We really concentrate on that because then we have the direct buyer and the seller. It makes it a lot more simple to get the operation closed.
Absolutely. So when you work with us, we spend the time at the beginning up front to really kind of get into your psyche to understand what is it that you want. So often we're kind of almost call it like property blind date. We're making that match from your dream listing to your direct buyer. I would say probably 80% of your transactions, and that's just magic. But I want to just look at, we talked a little bit about inventory levels. So stock, property is king. There is not enough stock in the market for the demand. What does that do to prices? Naturally, it causes prices to go up. So prices are still climbing. Property prices have increased over the past year. So if you've sat on the fence looking in, waiting for property prices to stabilise or go down, that did not happen, nor does the market show any indication that that's going to happen right now in terms of dropping prices dramatically due to the shortage of inventory and due to the shortage of stock. Let's talk about prices for a minute. You're an agent who lists a lot of properties. Talk about what you're finding.
So what I'm finding right now, when somebody contacts me through a referral or through a reputation, they're coming at me and saying, I want you to list my property but such and such John down the pub told me that it's worth this amount. And, I've been looking on Idealista or some property portals and they're all coming up crazy amounts. And I say, I totally get it. I say, when there's lack of properties in the area, there's desperation because there's a lot of real estates there and they need to feed mouths. Okay. But I can't listen to that noise. I've been in Benalmádena a long time. I know where the market value is. I sell a lot of properties in this area. And I say, like, this agent could list it at that, but at the end of the day, you're going to sell it at that. And you have to be realistic because people are not daft. People that are studying the market, looking at the market, ready to buy, have been looking over the last, say, 1 year. They know, so they're not going to come in and pay an overinflated price for a property that they don't think is worth the money. It's just not going to happen. If you get a one-off property where your frontline beach or it's totally renovated and walk-in condition, then you can get a higher premium. But if you're looking for a property, one agent has it at one price and another agent has it at another price in the same block, you really need to understand that there is a price on that. And if you go with myself, I will tell you that I will market it to the best of my ability and try and get you the buyer for the best price.
Yeah, and I think you're really honest with that. When we talk about this at home, I often compare it to when somebody is selling a property, it's often like your child or your pet. They do no wrong. It's perfect. And often we have blinkers on when it comes to our property. And sellers often have blinkers on and don't realise they do. And it causes them to lack objectivity often when it comes to evaluating what their property is actually worth. Sometimes it takes that tough conversation that you need to have with them to say, I know this is what such and such down the pub might have told you. I understand that this is what the other real estate agent might have told you, but in my experience selling all of the properties that I sell in Benalmádena, this is the actual value of your property. And sometimes it might mean that somebody says, Warner isn't the real estate agent for me, but look, that's life. But what it does mean further down the line is it avoids you having a difficult conversation when the property has been sitting on the market because it can't be shifted. And that's what we want to avoid, right? It's the situation that we always want to avoid because the cost sits with us when we carry the inventory, but also it's a disappointing experience for the seller. So that honest conversation up front and that expectation management, I think, is crucial. But let's talk a little bit about the type of buyer that we're still seeing on the ground over here. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm loving the type of buyer that we're seeing now because due to the tourist license regulations, there's a bit of instability with investors, which means that the holiday home people, the second home, the dream of, buying a property and having it in a family for 20 years is starting to come back, which is absolutely fantastic because I think that's the circle of life. I'm seeing a lot of sellers just now that have had the properties for over 20 years. They're in retirement age. Their family have all grown up. Now it's a change. They're selling their property now. And the holiday home people that are just coming into that phase are starting to come in the market, which is great because it's also the way that they're structuring this tourist license is there's going to be zones for commercial. So if investors coming in looking for a return, then the area will be zoned as a commercial where you can buy the tourist license, they can swap, they can get transferred. Where you got smaller developments, then they're going to be for the second home buyers, the people that want their family and friends to use it. So I think it's going to be a massive change to the market because we're going to see a lot more properties come on the market at good prices for second home buyers due to the legislation of the tourist license, and all those investors that had properties in the buildings were not allowing the tourist license, they're going to have to sell eventually, and then that will come back into the second home market.
I think we just need to pause there and give a bit of context for the listener. Let's start with the circle of life in terms of we're definitely seeing a cycle in terms of there's a lot of people selling at the moment that initially bought as an early kind of retirement plan to enjoy life in Spain, grandchildren coming over, kids visiting. Life has changed. The family is now going and having holidays in different places and they don't have an interest in coming to Spain. The apartment isn't getting used. It's time to sell. The person buying that is somebody entering into that cycle of their life, which is lovely, isn't it? They're starting to think about their own retirement plans and enjoying that same vision with their family, and that's nice to see. And that's able to happen now because, as Warner alludes, there has been changes to legislation introduced in Spain last year, and there's new legislation being introduced in April this year. So it's just coming through as this podcast is being released, whereby it will be more difficult to acquire tourist license in certain developments. So every urbanization or community in Spain has a community of owners, and this new legislation will basically ensure that community of owners have the power to decide what happens in their urbanization in their community. Look, this is a good thing in a lot of cases, because if you're a family and you're in a private residential area and there has been properties rented out for holiday lets in your area and maybe you haven't had any control over who's coming and going in your urbanisation, this will definitely create more security. It also means that there is certain urbanisations, I guess, that will be earmarked as holiday rental urbanisations, and there'll be ones that'll be more residential. So I think if you're an investor looking to dip your toe more in the short-term rental space, more going forward, you'll have to do a lot of due diligence with your real estate agent upfront to really earmark and research what urbanizations, what communities, what developments are going to be right for you to allow your investment plan to happen. Okay. But as Warner correctly states, it creates more opportunity for people to come into the market that really want to enjoy that dream of having that second home or retiring or that permanent home in Spain. So it's an interesting space to watch, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So who's buying?
We're actually seeing a lot of families looking to relocate to the Costa del Sol. They've had enough of the rat race in whatever country that they're from, and they just want the lifestyle. So we're actually seeing a lot of families coming, and Benalmádena is great for that because in the vicinity you've got about 4 international schools. So we're really seeing a lot of good properties getting sold, high-end villas, around 800,000 to over $1 million mark. So that's great to see as well because it's building the community.
Yeah, it's good. So I'd say the families are definitely there. They're looking at the Costa del Sol as a destination for them to raise their family and immerse themselves into that Mediterranean lifestyle, potentially leave the rat race of London, New York, bigger cities, and move themselves and their families to a top quality home in a place that's safe, that's secure, and where their kids can be kids, immerse themselves as a family into this way of life. And I think that's really beautiful. And it's lovely to see that type of buyer, and it's lovely to see them in Benalmádena because they're starting to understand I can get value for my money here compared to Marbella. And as you correctly alluded to, you've got an abundance of top-class international schools if they're moving at an age where Spanish education system, mainstream education system is not an option for them. I think it's also good to talk about we're still seeing the second home owner coming through. So maybe 10 years away from retirement, want to enjoy part of their life in Spain with eventually the plan to migrate over more permanently when they do retire. It's brilliant to see them back and immerse themselves into the market. And we still see the people that are just retiring and they're ready to now come over potentially with a non-lucrative visa or, if they're European a citizen, a different route for them and just really start enjoying the next chapter of their life. So it's lovely. In terms of nationalities, you cannot underestimate the resilience of the British buyer. It doesn't matter what rules you put in place for them. Brexit, outside EU, they are resilient and I admire that. I take my hat off. So British buyers is still there in abundance, which is great. We're seeing a lot of the Irish buyers still there kind of in the background, Americans, Canadians, and obviously a lot of Dutch. And we can see it in terms of when we look at the analytics of our website, even in the business, we can see the time zones and the locations that people are coming and starting to browse from. So it's great to see that the American and Canadian buyer is still there.
It's great that we're getting so much people coming to the Costa del Sol to relocate. So it's fantastic for Benalmádena where we live, so there's more money in the pot. As you said the other day, they're always cleaning, they're always making sure that the place is looking perfect.
Yeah, like we were out walking. If you're following us on Instagram, you're probably sick of seeing the same palm tree, but that's our morning stroll. And I just said to Warner, God almighty, like they spend a fortune on keeping this place pristine. They're up cleaning the palm trees and giving them a little haircut, and they're out power hosing down the streets. It really is spotless and it's beautiful to see. And that's creates a pride in where people are living because it's gorgeous and people want to come back. So lovely pride of place and great investment been put into Benalmádena, which is wonderful to see. Okay, we've talked about who's buying. We've talked about trends of prices, inventory levels, sales activity, which is still good. Okay, in terms of the type of property that's popular right now, what's your opinion on that?
The type of property here I'm seeing in Benalmádena is your one-bedroom apartments in the blocks where they can be close to the train station, be close to the town, walking distance. I kind of call it the first step on the ladder because it's affordable to people and they can basically get on the ladder and just test it out for a few years to see if that is something that they want to retire here or they want to upgrade to a bigger property, but then they'll have all that experience that they've had from living in that or using that as a second home to make that decision.
In terms of the type of properties, I think everything is still popular right now. We're seeing the villas in demand and the buyer that wants access to that premium property first, because for them it's very much about finding the right home for their family. And let's be frank, there is beautiful houses in Benalmádena for sale, but not all of them suit the layout or the logistics of a family. Properties that are good layout, large rooms, not necessarily a lot of stairs if you've got younger kids. You know, those properties, people want access to them first. Apartments close to the beach, gardens, pools, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom. I think you could, if you had 20 of them, you'd sell them. And there is still a demand for new builds. We still see that, absolutely. That's still there, that's prevalent. But I think the shift this year that I'm definitely observing is that family buyer that has tested the market in the Costa del Sol, potentially rented over a summer, tried the concept, has now decided this is going to be home and they want to find that perfect family home. That's the difference I see this year. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. And also a lot more retirement people thinking about, okay, well, I'm going to retire next year or a couple of years. I want to put things in place right now so that it's easy enough for me to do that. But you're right, like any property, if it's marketed properly, if it's priced correctly, probably sold in under 30 days.
Yeah, if it's priced correctly, that if it's positioned, marketed correctly, that's very important. Are there still bargains out there? The famous question.
I think it depends on what you call bargains. Okay, so if you look at it, if you're buying a property for a second home to use it for you and your family for the next 20 years, and you can afford the property to buy now, then yeah, it's an absolute bargain because look at how much it costs for a family of 4 to go on holiday every year. It's getting more expensive. So if you kind of weigh it up, yes, there is bargains, but you need to be ready. And I know with my exclusive properties, I have a list. So when I list the property, I have a list of people waiting for the right property. So there's not bargains in concern a price, but if you're in the right place at the right time, then go all in.
Yeah, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, okay, because we like to educate people on this podcast, but the days of coming to the Costa del Sol with 100 or 150,000 for a 2-bedroom apartment with a sea view, it isn't happening, okay? So you have to be realistic. You need to go up to the Costa Blanca, you need to go up towards Alicante direction. If that's your budget and your price range, you're not looking towards the Costa del Sol. Okay, so what else happened in Q1? I think we need to talk frankly about the news did arrive that the golden visa would be abolished from the beginning of April this year. So that was publicised quite a lot in the media. So the background here is that The Golden Visa was a visa that essentially allowed international buyers, non-EU buyers, to gain a visa into Spain once they spend 500,000 plus on a property. So that visa scheme or initiative is now abolished from April of this year. So it did see a rush, I guess, at the beginning of the first quarter for people that intended to use the Golden Visa as their gateway to Spain. There was a bit of panic, a bit of rush to, I guess, utilize that as their entry to Spain. But I think it's fair to say, if you're listening to this podcast now, which will be out in April of this year, that, you know, if your intention was to use the Golden Visa, your time has passed. That opportunity is now gone. You're too late, and the Golden Visa is no longer an option for you. And you need to review the other visa options if that's your intention. So let's also talk about quarter one. Then did also see a lot of negative press around Spain doesn't want international buyers. And I think that was heavily driven by the announcement from Pedro Sanchez, right, that arrived in the first quarter of this year around new taxes, 100% taxes for non-EU buyers. 100% of what? You know, it was, in my opinion, it was quite an irresponsible announcement. And what happened was the press took a tiny segment of a very large conference update that really negatively showed a statement that really expressed that new taxes would be introduced for non-EU buyers. And I think it just spread like wildfire, and it was another reason for people to really get nervous around investing and purchasing in Spain. But look, that is now firmly yesterday's news. We've not seen anything since in terms of new taxes for non-EU citizens. So I think as well, we discussed at the time, and we covered it in our bonus episode with Regina on this topic, Warner. It was a bit irresponsible,
yeah,
wasn't
it caused an absolute mayhem. Every real estate on the coast wanted to get first in the news, and we all kind of got together and said it just doesn't make sense. But it was picked up by the UK press. But thankfully, we've calmed the fire, and it's business as usual.
Yeah, good news. So nothing to worry about on that front, and no new taxes have been introduced for non-EU buyers intending to buy in Spain. So don't panic, calm the jets, as we would say. Okay, so look, we've talked a lot about quarter one. Let's talk about, I guess, your expert predictions then, Warner. So what do you say? Are prices going to continue to rise?
Yeah, I do think prices are going to continue to rise, but not by the last 4 years where they went up 10% or 15%. I think they'll rise gradually, and that's due to the supply and demand element of it. I am seeing not properties at high priced starting to come down, and that's probably because the reason is they're too expensive. So that's a good thing. It means that buyers out there are saying, okay, yeah, I want to buy my dream, but I ain't going to pay over the price that what it's worth. Depending on if it's a one-off property, if it's on the beach, if it's fully renovated, they will go up in price. They won't pay way over value. It just doesn't make sense for them. So I think gradually the prices will steadily increase, but a lot of them will start to stabilise as well, depending on what you're looking for. Demand will stay, especially this year as well. And I'm hoping, changing the tourist regulations and everything else, that more properties start to market and it starts to kind of regulate itself so that sellers can command a higher fee, and it starts to regulate itself so that to buy their dream home in the sun.
Okay. And then I guess final things is, what are we seeing on the ground in terms of, are there whispers of new regulations that could affect buyers? I guess just to say on this, we know that April 3rd brings new regulations connected to tourist licenses. where the community of owners will be granted power to decide whether they want to approve or decline new licences or transfer licences for current apartments in their urbanisations. So if you are intending to buy for investment, you need to watch this space very carefully over the next number of weeks, and you need to work with a good lawyer, a good legal team to really do your due diligence on your property to ensure that there's an assessment done of the previous community minutes and that there's time spent to gain an understanding if a tourist licence will be improved in the community that you've identified moving forward, because you do not want to be in a situation where you purchase a property with the intention to rent out on short-term rentals, then to find that it's blocked by your community. So you need to assess this space. I think this is going to be the next big one, the next one to watch in terms of buying for short-term investment. You need to do your due diligence on this space really, really well.
Yeah, absolutely. Watch this space. We'll see what happens when these regulations come in. I think it's a good thing because then, build the commercial areas where investors can buy. And then we know where the holiday homeowners can buy as well. So hopefully, if the way it works out, it'll be a good thing for the market.
Yeah, I heard you mention to somebody earlier, because obviously many of our listeners might not know, but you lived in Dubai and sold real estate in Dubai, and you described it like that you see that it's kind of going like that setup in Dubai where you have zones, where there's certain areas where locals can buy and there's certain areas where people can buy for investment. Is that how you kind of, if you were to be a betting man, I guess, is that the way you see this kind of organising itself, so to speak?
And also, if investors have got a few properties in the area, they're in the area where the communities are going to close them down, then there's going to be pressure on that person if there's any problems with renting his apartment out to sell, which means that he would have to sell to a person from a second home or a person that wants to live there permanently. But then when he gets the price for that, then he can buy in an investment area where he can rent his property out short term. Because don't forget, short term is fantastic value. You can use it, your family can use it, you can say when you want to be there and when you don't want to be there. It's a great investment, but the good thing is that it'll be zoned so there won't be any problems in the future if you do it properly.
Thank you for your wise words, Warner. So, final thoughts from us. If you're planning to buy, the key is being informed and acting strategically. Do your due diligence. Look, that's why we do these market updates. We really want to help you have your finger on the pulse in terms of what's happening on the ground here in the sunny Costa del Sol. We really want to help you make the best possible informed decision. Thank you for listening. Thank you so much for listening into today's episode on the Costa Property Podcast. Another fantastic episode learning about the highs and lows of relocating to the Costa del Sol from real people who have been through the journey themselves, and of course our wonderful experts. If you have been enjoying the show so far, remember to hit subscribe to the podcast and leave a rating or review.
We absolutely love hearing your thoughts. Please send any questions that you would like us to answer on the show to warner@wlcostaproperties.net. Or you can pop us a message on our socials, which are in the show notes. Remember, you can also visit the website www.wlcostaproperties.net.
See you on the next episode, and bye for now.
Bye-bye.